Sunday Talks with the Marshmello Man.
Hi, I'm Ossie from 3 Monkey Solderless, home of the world's best cables for your pedalboard application, both for DC and quarter-inch audio. All kinds of different types of cable and colors of cable. Easiest stuff to put together. Sounds fantastic. Road tested. Check us out at 3monkeysolderless.com. All right, so this is Sunday Talks with the Marshmello Man. And this is where I try to answer some questions and comments that appear in sort of like the questions and comments area below the videos that I've sort of put up. And they don't have to be from this video alone or last week's video. If people comment on other areas on the channel, because I've got a lot of videos up there, I'll try to, if they're long, I'll try to address them here, or if they're interesting to talk about, I'll try to address them here. So with that said, the first video, or rather, excuse me, the first series of questions I wanted to get to is actually from an older video, and it was from that Van Halen 1 pickup comparison, or one of them that I had done. I think this is the first one, which got a lot of activity. So this is a series of questions that were from Mary Jazlatar 5457. I hope I'm saying that right. Which is best to basswood guitar, rosewood fretboard, neck, maple? What do you think? Kind regards. Okay, so I commented to try the maple neck first and see what you think. I mean, it goes on from here, which would get more interesting. Notice if you want to help, no problem. Can I ask you some questions about Mighty Mite regards, of course. I'm going to expand this out. This is sort of a longer question. Very kind of you. Believe me, you're practically the only person on the web that I see that does everything to be able to say what I need. I have a Jackson Warrior, made in Japan. Looks like with a Duncan design detonator. I'm not familiar with that pickup. I never used one. Which is very bassy and somewhat bright and sharp pickup. Very like the Duncan Distortion and Super 2s. I've heard about the Mighty Mite before and now see your amazing videos and I like them very much. Well, thanks. And I don't know what would be best for me. So please try to tell me some things that I don't know so I can decide more easily. I don't know what kind of EQ some of them have, so I can't classify the same things of interest to me. Tell me what's the difference between a Seymour Duncan Distortion and a Mighty Mite 1300. Not a whole lot. You know, they're very similar. They're very similar wind. They have the same kind of a magnet, a ceramic magnet. So, you know, they're going to fall within a class of pickup, right? Which would be the Super Distortion, right? Because I think that's the progenitor of the Mighty Mite, would have been the Super Distortion, which was, I believe there was some input there by Seymour Duncan back in the day to create something for Mighty Mite that was similar to actually he's asking for the Seymour Distortion in the Mighty Mite 13. I'm talking about the Super Distortion, right? So the Super Distortion is what I was talking about. And there was, you know, Mighty Mite wanted a copy of that. Now the Duncan Distortion, I have used the Duncan Distortion and I found that to be the one that I have, right? To be a little bit more bassy than the Mighty Mites are, or the DiMarzio. It also, the one that I have uses a row of slugs and a roll of screws, right? Where when you have the, and mine's an older Seymour, and where you have on the Mighty Mite, it can be either 2 rows of Allens or it could be 2 rows of slugs. They don't use like the smaller screws. Same thing with the DiMarzio Super Distortion. Those use just 2 rows of Allens, right? And every pickup kind of sounds very different, right? So even within the wines themselves, like I've said that I've gotten pickups of the same model from the same manufacturers and found them to sound somewhat different, right? They're all within a ballpark, but they're going to sound a little different, right? Like for instance, if you get a bunch of Granny Smith apples, they all look a little different. You taste them, some taste better than others, right? Some are sweeter, some are bitter, some, and your taste, the way that your taste buds work and your brain interprets all that will tell you which ones you like more, and differences of opinion can, exist that, oh, I like this with a little more tart, this one a little more sweet, but suffice it to say you would recognize all of those pieces of fruit as a Granny Smith apple, yet none of them are identical in taste, right? So that's sort of like the same thing in pickups. They're all Granny Smiths, but they don't really ever quite taste exactly the same, right? So the following on, what's the difference in sound between a Super 2 and a 14? All right, so the 1400, I believe, is the lower wind of the Mighty Mites, which is no longer being produced, right? You'd have to get a vintage one. I've used both. I find that the Super 2 is brighter. It really is. At least the one that I have, right? I've got a Super 2 in this guitar over here, and it's a fairly bright guitar. And I do like the Super 2s. I think they're a very good pickup. They're sort of underrated in the bridge position. A lot of people think it should go only in a neck position due to that extra sort of like that low wind and extra brightness that the ceramic magnets will kind of afford to the design. I tend to think that you should use whatever you want, wherever you want, and try it and see if it works with what you got, right? Because we all have different hands, we have different ears, we have different gear, and what might work for me may not work for you. Vice versa, unless we have all things being equal, which is very difficult to do. If not, I would dare say it's impossible. Your results are always going to vary. So you have to be able to experiment with what you have on hand and be able to take advantage of your strengths and weaknesses and put everything together signal chain wise in a way that is synergistic, right? So no one solution is going to be correct, right? We're trying to add up to 10. Let's say, and you got some people have 3 2s and 4 1s. That's up to 10. Some other guys got 2 5s, right? Someone else has got a 9 and a 1. Point being is there are many different solutions to get to the end result, right? So I could give you some ballpark information on this stuff, but in the end, you're gonna have to try it with your own sort of touch and with your own gear. Is it good to go with this is following on with the question, is it good to go with an 8 or 9K, or is 14K better? That's something you're going to have to test, right? Winds have more to do, right, in terms of what their resistance is, has to do with their frequency range more so than their output. Now, granted, if you could put more copper on a coil, right, in a certain way, maybe you can get a little bit more output out of it. But in the end, you end up putting about the same amount of copper, right? Because you're talking about when you use a 14K, when you wind a 14K pickup, you're going to use a thinner gauge, right, than you do with an 8 or a 9. So the weight may be the same. Just the lengths are going to be more, right? So that's going to have all different also issues with, inductance, transductance, capacitance. All of these things are going to take into effect. So the wind pattern, how it's wound, how the different wires interrelate with each other as they're put on the bobbin, that all changes things too. So, you're going to have to check that out. So going on with the question, I know 8K is bright, but does it have enough power or does it put more amp volume? What do you think? Well, that was sort of, I sort of answered that, I guess, already in regards to, the magnet is the motor, right? That's the motor. So the bigger magnets tend to have more power, right? More Gauss, more ability to generate current, to move those electrons back and forth in the wire itself. So the magnet is really the thing that does everything. I mean, you can obviously say that you can gain a little bit here and there from the wind, from, the slugs or screws that you use, but in the end, the magnet is the driver, right? You can get that's why people are amazed about the Duncan 78, that it's only a 9K pickup, but it kind of puts out a lot, right? And that's mostly to do with that magnet, I think, is basically charged to the max. Let's see. So going back to guitars, right? A little bit of the, today we have peach drink. Going back to guitars. Now you look at woods, okay? So what wood sounds like what? It's difficult to say, right? Why one wood sound exactly like another, right? Is maple bright? Is mahogany warm? Is Carina mid-rangey? Is swamp ash, mellow? Is alder spanky? All these things. And I find the answer to all of it is it can be, but it doesn't have to be. All right. So you can find among a species a wide variety of tones, right? Inside of the species itself, right? So when I've built guitars, I've built set necks, Les Pauls, Flying V's, Explorers, I've built Stratocasters, Telecasters, my own designs, all kinds of crazy stuff over, most of my life, right? And I've found that woods, when I go out, would buy wood, like big, huge things of mahogany, right? That are 6 inches thick, 15 inches wide, and 10 feet long, right? And some of it you get, it could weigh like, 2.5 pounds a board foot. It's like really light, right? It's like swamp ash. And you'll find other stuff that weighs like 4 pounds a board foot. All right. It's like maple. So that contributes to like the tone. To me, it's always been about density, right? The density of the wood that you've got. So you can find lightweight maple. You can find very heavy maple. You can find lightweight ash. You can find heavy ash. You can even find some heavy basswood, if you can believe it or not. I found chunks of basswood that were, north of 3 pounds a board foot, which is, to my mind, that seems pretty heavy, right? The next thing, considering like how is my guitar going to sound, right? The construction methods are also probably extremely important. And by that, I mean like what kind of truss rod is in there, right? I've found, interestingly enough, that the tone sometimes, and bolt-on guitars, right, seems to follow the neck more than the body, which is kind of like contravening to like the whole like Eddie Frankenstrat theory in a way, which is strange. I mean, you get used to things, right? And the body becomes like, the host for these parasites that we bolt on the neck, right? But I've found that when I try to, I'll try to massage guitars a little bit, right? I'll take the neck off of this and put it on that and see, whether I get combinations that I like through experimentation. And I often find that I seem to like the way that the neck sounds as it goes around to the different guitars. I'm like, this neck seems to make every guitar sound better. So this neck is the one, right? And that might have to do with my taste, obviously. Some people might say that thing sounds worse. So, you have to know what you want to hear and how it works with you, right? So I do have some guitars lying around, right, in the room right here that might be illustrative of the concept, right? So let's say within basswood, right? So I have this guitar, which is a basswood guitar, right, and has a maple neck on it, and it also has a double action truss rod. It's not a single action truss rod in there. It's a double acting, which is a heavier piece of steel inside of the neck itself, right? I tend to find that makes things sound a little bit, to my ear, the way that these are. And this is actually a Mighty Mite neck, right? It's like a newer Mighty Mite neck that I had taken and smashed against the microphone. And I had, reworked the way that, Paul Unkert had done with a Kramer neck to make it into like that banana head, right? I cut the Strat headstock down and glued on the ears and then shaped it all out. But anyway, I'm finding that all the Mighty Mite necks seem to have this mellow sound. And I'm wondering if it's because the truss rod, the double action, is also set in there, maybe with some compound or some sort of substance to reduce vibration of the rod rattling in the neck, which may sort of smooth things out. But anyway, so let me move this mic down to the guitar and we can listen to different woods, right? So this has a very kind of mellow, has a very kind of mellow sound compared to, let's say, just really quick for comparison's sake, a Warmoth neck, right, in this hard ash body, right? Right, you can hear it's kind of plinky, right? So that would be, something that you might want to try for a pickup that has a lot of low end to it, right? So matching the two. All right, so let's go back again to this basswood again and listen to that. Right, and then I'll take this basswood guitar. And it's always best to listen to this stuff acoustically, right? When you're trying to decide, what pickup should I put in this thing, right? And then you can get a sort of a bass line and go from there. But so you can see this one is a little bit brighter. It's basswood still. Both have, the same type of Floyd Rose, a vintage, 80s Kramer era Floyd. And then we'll go to a guitar which will kind of defy, in my mind, some of what we're hearing here. So this is a maple body, right? Maple neck, but with an ebony board, which is considerably supposed to be bright, but it's a Mighty Mite again, which, that truss rod I think is having an effect on the sound, but listen to it. See, there's a little bit of scoop in this one, right? All right, and then we'll take another sort of Mighty Mite neck with this is a light swamp ash body, right? Seems to be fretting out a bit. Might need a neck adjustment. Yeah, so there's slight differences, right? But more and more, I think the tone sort of like follows the neck, the type of neck construction. I think the brightest guitar in the room is the Warmoth, and I find that to be the case more often than not. And I like Warmoth necks quite a bit. But when I use them, I tend to find them to be a bit brighter for some reason with their construction techniques, a bit clearer sounding than some of the Mighty Mite kind of stuff. So I guess the word there is you got to pay your dues, right? You got to kind of buy a bunch of crap and waste a bunch of money trying to figure out what works. It's just sort of the way it goes. All right, so we got that question. So let's move on from there. There were a few more questions, so I'm going to go right here and go through all these. All right, so we got Stu the True. Been looking through warm brown sound videos all day. This is the closest to Ed's tone. Great job. Well, thank you, Stu the True. This was from the Slaving to Marshalls, or Slaving to Vintage Marshalls together, right? So that was a video where I had taken the 50 watter that you can't really see. It's right there below the Univox, and slaved it into the 100 watt 72 Super Lead, right? So a lot of guys, I still find that sound is definitely, I think that what was going on, right? That there was slaving involved. But I always find that those heads on their own are too bright. They just don't quite work, right? The way that they're set up stock, the way that they're set up. So I think when you change a few things, then it starts to work, right? You have to sort of get the voltage down a lot. Then you have to sort of bias the tubes in a very particular place, which is extremely hot, right? And then you have to load the output section in a way that limits the excursion of the tubes as well. So it sort of keeps them in an area where they really produce a lot of grind, right? And a lot of fatness and a kind of a harmonic overtone to them, which is different than they do in their stock. So, I do like those vids, but it was sort of along the way in the journey to sort of, which we're always going to be on, right? We're never going to get where we want to go, right? But that was sort of like a step in the journey to where we are now, or where I am right now with, how I load the Marshmello, the 1 amp, right? That seems to be closer to me now. And I'm going to have to do some slaving videos with the 1 amp and show you how that works. I'm right in the process of building a couple for some people. So I'll take one of those and do a demo with it. So, all right, let's see. Peter Nickel. Hi, Peter. Hey, Ossie, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed every video in the series. So this is the Vic Johnson amp demo. All right, so that series series of videos is kind of long, and it ends with a demo that I did. Now, it was an amplifier that I had built for Vic Johnson, right? Playing with Sammy Hagar in the Circle and Chickenfoot. And it was a copy of my Jose, right? Vic actually sent me a demo of him playing it, right? I don't know if I can put that up on YouTube, because he kind of just, he didn't say, hey, here's a video, do what put it up on YouTube. He just sent me a video of him playing it at the, during rehearsal at wherever they were doing rehearsals at. It looked like at a sound stage someplace, right? Inside a warehouse, something like that, where they were doing, getting ready for the touring. Maybe I'll contact him and see if I could put that up. Is that guy rips? I mean, he just has got this really, really good right hand, right? Just this really cool groove with his right hand. Obviously his left is no slouch either, but he's got that thing, right? Which is just, it just sits in the pocket, right? It's just, his sense of timing is really cool. It's something I don't know. Can you learn that? I don't know. Maybe. I think that's something you're born with. Wish I had it. That'd be cool. So it says, hey, Ossie, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed the video in the series. Thanks so much for all the details. There's not much out there like it. Great playing with it. Yeah, okay. The amp sounds amazing. If you don't mind, I would like to know the model numbers of your power transfer, output transfer, and choke noise, or if you don't have time. Expanding. Once again, thanks for the inspiration. Okay, so for output transformers, chokes, and all that kind of stuff for a Jose, right? So basically you want to use something like a Dagnall or a Drake, kind of like copy, right? Depending upon what year you're trying to Jose, right? So if you had an earlier Marshall versus a later Marshall, Drake versus Dagnall, right? So now, I'm not saying you're going to go out and buy a Drake or you're going to buy a Dagnall, right? Like a vintage one. If you can, that's great. But for me, lately, I've really started to like hay bowers, right? I've used hay bower 20 something years, right? That I've been dealing with the fine folks over at hay bower transformers, and they're in Michigan. And Arlen, Alden, all the people over there have always been great to me. I've I remember when I met them at a guitar show, it felt like meeting like my long lost uncle that I hadn't seen in like 50 years. It was really cool, and I still use them today, right? The Marshmello transformers, I had them wind me up the designs for this amplifier, right? With the changes that I wanted done. And that was, a lot of fun working with them. So yeah, it's hay bower. Pretty much like the standard fare, right? The voltage doubler type power transformer stand up. Nothing too exotic. And in the end, all this stuff sounds pretty good, right? I mean, there's so many great companies out there. Classic Tone makes some good stuff. Mercury makes some good stuff. I like hay bowers. So you can't go wrong there with their 100 watt plexi power output and choke, right? And it's the, what is it? A 2 Henry, I think? Or is it the 5 Henry? I'll post it up, but I think it's the 2 Henry choke in there. I'll have to look again. Okay. Here we keep going. All right. So now we've got some comments from last week's Sunday Talks with the Marshmello Man. This is from These Go to 11, 1968. Expand this comment out. For what it's worth, the old Frankenstrat Wolf used for the track is the last rendition of it that Eddie did to the guitar. He swapped out the original pickup he used and replaced it with a new Zebra EVH Wolfgang bridge pickup. It was strange hearing that guitar played by someone else as well as hearing it with a Wolfgang pickup. I think Wolfgang Van Halen is very talented and very pleased. He sounds like himself and not a clone of his dad. The tune was a good one. The solo play was fitting in it. Yeah, Wolf is definitely a monster. There's no question about it. He has a lot of talent. There's more talent in that man than I have the courage to recognize. Very great player. Yeah, so that Frankenstrat, how many pickups has been in that guitar, right? We don't even know. I mean, a ton, right? An absolute ton of pickups have been in that Frankenstrat for sure. So the Wolfgang, a Zebra EVH Wolfgang. So I'm going to guess that the EVH Wolfgang bridge pickup is something similar to like a Tone Zone or a custom, right? Or the ones that were in the Music Man Axis, the Van Halen models, right? Correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I really don't know. But that's what I'm assuming from the way it sounds. And sort of where Ed sort of like ended up was around that 13 to 14K wind with an Alnico magnet, right? Which brings us back to, the original album where she claims, was, could it have been a Duncan distortion or a Mighty Mite, but was the magnet swapped? That's still something that we have to explore, right? And I plan on doing that, right? He said he took a magnet out of a PAF and put it in there. So I have some original PAF magnets. So I think that, and some original Mighty Mites. Not that, as like I said, everything's a little bit different. Not that it's going to be a perfect comparison, but it would be interesting to hear what it sounds like. Okay, so yeah. Thanks for that comment. These go to 11, 1968. And then we have Dan the Tube Man hanging out again. Wolfgang is a great musician. He kicked ass playing bass with his dad, and I'm a big Michael Anthony fan for Van Halen. Yeah, it's hard to, pick favorites there. Mike is a great bass player. And on top of that, his harmonies, his voice is just, that was half of the reason why Van Halen sounded the way it did on those albums, right? Was that sort of nod to, an older time, like almost, getting into doo-wop, things like that. The harmonies that they used, the 3-part harmonies that Templeman probably suggested, or not, I don't think he suggested, because they were doing it live too. But just that whole idea, maybe it was Ed's dad, right? Because he was sort of into that whole, that whole sort of like swing, sort of like thing, jazz swing sort of thing, the 50s American sort of style of music. Very well could have been that. So Mike's contribution to the band cannot be understated, right? But Wolfgang can sing, it's like you listen to tracks of Ed singing, and Wolfgang did not get his voice from Ed. He got a lot from that side of the family. I'd be curious to know, like what Valerie Bertinelli's family is regarding like musicality. Like, I'm guessing that she has a lot of musical talent in her family. I'm guessing that because, she's artistic. It's part of that sort of thing. They're from the South somewhere, I think from Louisiana maybe or something like that. So, that's a great place to grow up if you're into, playing music and doing, learning music, things like that. So I'd be curious to know, does anybody know, like, is Valerie's brother like some like crazy piano player? Or is he like an old standard singer? Was he the guy, every Italian family has like an uncle that is like, Tony Bennett, I swear to God. And you'll have a wedding and he'll go up on stage and he'll just put it down, right? It's like, how did this even happen? It's like he doesn't even he's like, an accountant or something like that. Yet there he is up on stage singing some old standard and just absolutely doing it right, right? So I'm guessing there's something like that going on in there because he's definitely, Wolfgang seems like he got double power, right? Okay, thanks for the comment, Dan. Agreed. All right, so then we have Che Guitarra. That's a funny one. 3657. All right, Che. Saying Serem Mod. So I actually had to sort of dig this out of the memory banks, and I'm going to get this all wrong, but I think some 20 years ago, he's referring to the mod that we talked about last week, where you were to put a resistor between or across the primaries of the output transformer, right? So it'd be like from pin 3 to pin 3 on either side of the push-pull to use that as a master volume. And yeah, I mean, that's something that's sort of been around, like a known kind of like thing to do. I think it was then someone named Serem, and I want to say it was on, oh my God, what was the name of the place? Vic's place, right? Plexi Palace. It just came back to me. I think it was Plexi Palace, right? So Vic Mason had this place. I think he still does. Specializing in, vintage British sort of gear, especially Marshalls. And he had sort of like the progenitor of the Metro Forum, right? And it was a Plexi Palace Forum. And there you had all kinds of like amp guys that used to hang out and bullshit and do all kinds of things. I think I used to lurk in there every once in a while. That was when I was doing Blockhead, right? So Vic and I had talked a bunch of times, and I like Vic very much. And I didn't want to be, on his forum, being me. And this didn't seem like the right thing to do. And commenting and doing all that stuff. I don't know whether he would have appreciated. Maybe he would have liked it. Maybe it would have been like, that would have been cool. I don't know. But I just felt like, that's his spot. He deserves he created it. He gets the spotlight. I ain't coming in there and doing anything. But there was, I think, a guy there that went by the handle Serem that talked about this mod, right? Now, I don't know if he's the original. I don't think so. It's sort of like, master volumes, right? Like, these are things that sort of, I guess that happens in everything, right? That oftentimes creation is attributed to the wrong person, right? That seems to happen. And it's hard to know who the wrong person is or who the right person is, right? So you have like that master volume circuit with a double, a dual ganged potentiometer. And I can't remember, it's, the post phase inverter master volume, right? And some people, I can't remember the names that people call it, right? But when they started calling that, I was like, what? Because Ken Fisher, I used to talk to Ken, way back. And he actually had offered us the Trainwreck pages to publish. He was like, why don't you, before he was with Comet and all that stuff. And that was really dumb to not do that. But I've done a lot of dumb things in my life, just thinking I got to do my own thing, right? So pass on this, pass on that. I've passed on some things that people would be like, "Are you an idiot?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I am an idiot." So Ken Fisher was the place where I learned about that master volume, right? Was from him. And it's in the train wreck pages. And the train wreck pages, predate the internet. Well, not the internet, but predate, anybody that's not in the science lab at a university using the internet. Okay? That's the case. So, I don't know if that particular modification, Serem, came up with that. The other thing would be let's say in terms of patent law, right? So I think a patent, you're going to have people that are, let's say, very knowledgeable in the field to which you're working in and applying for a patent in, right? Examining the patent and see if there is any originality to your idea. I have a patent, so I've been through this, so I know what's going on. All right, so that takes a long time, and you get all these guys that are science guys, and they'll go through the patent, and they'll start to look up whether there's anything in the annals of the patent office that kind of would say that this has already been come up with. The other rule, and this is the important rule, would be that you can't patent something that somebody with reasonable competency in the field would be able to come up with fairly easily. Now, that makes me, that comes to this REM mod. I mean, something like that, when you look at an amplifier, right? It works based upon principles that have been known for 100 years plus, right? I mean, absolutely. Would understanding that lowering the primary resistance or in a sense, shorting out one side of the transformer reduce the volume? I think that's something that, if you're competent at all in electronics, you'd be able to figure out pretty easily, right? So my guess is, like everything else, the Egyptians have said there is nothing new under the sun, right? 5 minutes after someone comes up with an idea, there's 1,000 things that, just like today on the internet, there's 1,000 permutations of it, taking it out to the nth degree, where all of a sudden everything that you could do with it is covered, right? So I remember talking to Ken Fisher, and he had said that he had something like, I mean, obviously he was, being hyperbolic here, but he had said that I got 100 master volume mods. I know 100 places I could do it. And I'm like, I don't think there's 100 parts in the amp. So how are you gonna get 100? But meaning to say, there's so many places in an amplifier where you could get volume reduction from. Right? So, yeah, Serem mod. I dig it. That was a blast from the past. I forgot about the Plexi Palace. That place was cool. And they had really cool pictures, right? So this is going back, right, before. Now it's like everybody's spoiled, right? Oh, so I remember trying to, figure out what made Plexis tick and JTM45s and 18 watters. And there wasn't this machine sitting in front of me where you just Google things for 2 seconds and you have 18 million articles on the history of the Marshall 18 watt combo and every schematic of every variation and in 200 photographs. No, not 200, but that ain't going to be the case. But photographs of the interiors, layouts, guys making the parts. It's ridiculous. So when I was making 18 watters, it was like no one even knew that they existed. Let alone what they were, right? So it was like hunting Bigfoot. It really was. I mean, flying around the country trying to see an amplifier, right? Driving hours because you heard some guy has an amp that you haven't seen before in his basement and you want to go and look at it. Or buying crap from all over the world unseen just to see what the hell it is, right? To see what's going on. And then figuring out, what is this board made out of? It was this phenolic, paper grade phenolic, something like that. Where can I get that? Then you got to order catalogs. Paper books full of parts, right? And you start flipping through the pages, looking for parts, right? Calling up places. out of the blue, right? From the yellow pages. It says here you sell plastics. What do you know about paper grade phenolic? What? Okay. Over and over again, finding out, teaching yourself how to weld, how to make chassis. You know, this was the craziness that you had to go through to make an amplifier, right? To make a copy of a Plexi, right? And make them for other people. You had to figure out stuff like, what is this cabinet made out of? You know, taking wood samples, right? Finding that Marshall made some cabinets out of mahogany, right? Old ones, right? Where the grill cloth looks like living room curtains. I mean, the craziest shit you ever saw in your life, right? And then you open the thing up and you're like, you smell it. It's like, that smells different. And then you realize the woods has a particular grain to it, very straight, and it's pink. And you're like, oh shit, that ain't birch, right? And then you gotta find out where do you get birch wood from? And then you start calling up boat makers and like, where do you get marine grade plywood from? Oh, try this place. It's a boat yard in Norwalk, Connecticut. That's where I buy my birch plywood for my boats. So then you got to go to Norwalk, Connecticut and start looking around at birch, right? Just crazy stuff like that. So now everything you want, it's like you just press a button and it appears. So whatever. It was a lot of fun doing the homework though. All right. So Serem Mod, that was a lot of fun. I'm getting really long on this thing. So I'm going to have to shut it down pretty soon. All right. Johnny Bean, yeah, we got to do show. Absolutely. Hit me up, for God's sakes. All right, Craig Cornell. Moto Teddy pedal question. All right, so the Moto Teddy is like the Jose little pedals that there's some videos of that you put as like a, you know, you could drive the front end of your amp or whatever you want to do with it. Do you think running the preamp at 90 volts with a variac would cause any long-term issues with the preamp? Nope. Go right ahead. Do whichever you want. No problems at all. Run it down to 2 if you like. Ain't going to hurt nothing. Let's see. I think that's it. I think that's what we got. And you know what? I think that's all we're going to do. There may be something else there. I hope not. If I missed you, I apologize and we'll try to get to you. Or I'll try to answer your question in the comments section of the video that you posted in if there's something I'm missing. But yeah, so that's it. So there's some interesting stuff. You know, more fuel for the brain, right? A lot of you guys are, you know, sort of been down this road and you know, I'm preaching to the gospel about having to find your own way and hack your way with your machete through the weeds until you arrive at your temple, right? There's no simple way to do it. And it requires a lot of patience and it requires a lot of experimentation. But if you're driven to do this sort of thing, it's going to be fun for you. So I'm guessing most of the people that watch this video are probably as crazy as I am. And it's going to be fun for them too. So yeah, experiment. Don't be afraid to try things. After all, it's only stuff. All right. So I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out 3monkeysolderless.com for the pedalboard stuff. And there'll be more Marshmello content and some more tone chasing kind of stuff up soon. So thanks again, and I'll see you later.